Two grizzly bears begs this human baby for help at their home. What happened next will shock you. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Every bit of your support helps us create even more amazing stories for you. The morning sun filtered through the tall pine trees surrounding the small cottage where little Noah lived with his parents. At just 10 months old, Noah had recently mastered crawling and spent his mornings exploring every corner of their home at the forest's edge. His mother, Emma, was busy preparing breakfast in the kitchen while his father, Daniel, had gone to town for supplies. Noah's curious blue eyes caught sight of something moving outside the open door. He babbled happily, thinking it might be the chipmunks he loved to watch. With determined little hands and knees, he crawled toward the threshold, the warm sunlight beckoning him closer to the porch. What happened next would have terrified most adults, but Noah, in his innocent perception of the world, felt only wonder. Two massive grizzly bears emerged from the dense forest line. Their enormous bodies cast long shadows across the sunlit clearing as they approached the cottage with unusual urgency. Their fur was matted in places, and their movement seemed pained rather than threatening. Emma was humming in the kitchen, unaware of the scene unfolding just yards away. Noah sat perfectly still in the doorway, his tiny fingers gripping the wooden frame. Instead of the ferocious growls that these magnificent creatures were known for, strange whimpering sounds escaped from their throats. The larger bear limped slightly, while the smaller one kept looking back toward the forest, as if something precious had been left behind. The bears paused at the garden gate, their labored breathing visible in the cool morning air. The larger bear's eyes, deep pools of amber, fixed on Noah with what could only be described as desperation. Noah, instead of crying or retreating, tilted his head to one side and made a soft cooing sound. In that moment, something extraordinary passed between the baby and the bears, an understanding that transcended the barriers of species. Emma called from the kitchen, "Noah, sweetie, where are you?" Her voice grew closer, but Noah remained transfixed. The bears did not charge or show signs of aggression. Instead, the wounded one lowered its massive head in what appeared to be a boo, a gesture so human-like it would have astonished wildlife experts. The smaller bear made a gentle woofing sound, then both looked back toward the forest before turning their gaze to Noah again. Noah's tiny hand reached out, not in fear but in compassion. The sunlight caught his delicate fingers as they stretched toward these creatures that could end his life with a single swipe. But instead of danger, Noah sensed only fear and pain emanating from them. They needed something. They needed help. Emma's footsteps approached the doorway. "Noah, it's time for—" Her words froze in her throat as she saw her baby reaching toward two wild grizzly bears. Her instinct was to scream, to rush forward and snatch her child from certain death, but something stopped her. The bears weren't attacking. They were waiting, watching, almost pleading. The larger bear took a tentative step back, then forward again, its eyes never leaving Noah. It repeated this motion several times, clearly wanting them to follow. Emma stood paralyzed, her heart pounding against her ribs. Noah, however, seemed to understand perfectly. He began crawling forward, determined to follow the bears. "Noah, no!" Emma whispered, finally finding her voice. She rushed to her baby, scooping him into her arms, but the bears still made no aggressive move. They waited at the edge of the forest, looking back expectantly. Daniel's truck rumbled up the dirt road at that moment. He slammed on the brakes when he saw his wife standing on the porch, clutching their son, with two grizzly bears less than 30 feet away. He reached for the rifle he kept under the seat, his hands shaking. "Daniel, wait!" Emma called out, surprising herself. "Something's wrong. They're not attacking, I think." I think they're asking for help. Daniel emerged cautiously from the truck, rifle in hand but pointed downward. Emma, that's crazy. Get back inside. Look at them, she insisted. The bears continued their strange behavior, moving a few steps toward the forest, then looking back at the family. The wounded one let out a mournful sound that made Noah reach his arms toward them, straining against Emma's protective grip. They want us to follow them, Emma said, her voice steadier now. Something's happened in the forest. Daniel's forehead creased with disbelief. This isn't a Disney movie, Emma. These are wild animals. But as they watched, the bears continued their bizarre plea, and Noah became increasingly agitated, as if he understood something the adults couldn't comprehend. I'm going to see what they want, Emma decided, clutching Noah tighter. Absolutely not, Daniel protested, but Emma's determined expression stopped him. Then you take Noah inside and I'll go. No one is following those bears, Daniel insisted, but even as he spoke, the wounded bear collapsed briefly to its knees before struggling back up. Its eyes locked on the humans in a way that seemed impossibly intelligent. Daniel, Emma said softly, I've lived near these woods my whole life. This isn't normal behavior. Something is terribly wrong. After a tense moment, Daniel nodded reluctantly. I'll come with you, but at the first sign of danger, we're out of there. He went back to the truck and grabbed a first aid kit alongside his rifle. Noah stays here, though. Emma shook her head. They came to him, Daniel, not to us. It's like they knew. Knew what? That a baby could help them? Daniel sounded incredulous. I don't know, Emma admitted, but I'm not leaving him alone in the house, and I don't think they'll lead us anywhere if we don't bring him. Against his better judgment, Daniel agreed to this unprecedented family expedition. With Noah securely in Emma's arms and Daniel keeping his rifle ready, they cautiously followed the bears into the forest. The bears maintained a distance, continuously looking back to ensure the family was following. The journey took them deeper into the woods than Emma or Daniel had ever ventured. The trees grew denser, filtering the sunlight into dappled patterns on the forest floor. Noah remained unusually calm, occasionally pointing toward the bears with excited babbles. After 20 minutes of walking, they heard it. A pained, high-pitched whine that didn't sound like any adult bear. The two grizzlies quickened their pace, leading the family to a small clearing where fallen logs and debris formed what appeared to be a den. What they found there would change their lives forever. Inside the makeshift den, trapped beneath a fallen tree and ensnared in what appeared to be an illegal steel trap, was a bear cub no more than a few months old. Its tiny paw was caught in the metal jaws of the trap, and dark blood matted its fur. The cub's weak cries tore at Emma's heart as Noah squirmed in her arms, reaching toward the suffering baby bear. "Dear God," Daniel whispered, lowering his rifle completely. "Poachers. They're after the cubs." The adult bears stood back, their eyes moving between their trapped cub and the humans, their message now crystal clear. Their baby needed help that their powerful but clumsy paws couldn't provide. Daniel approached slowly, speaking in a calm, low voice. "Easy now. We're going to help your little one." Emma held Noah tightly as he continued reaching for the cub, making soft noises that sounded almost like the bear's own whimpers. The adult bears shifted nervously but made no move to attack. With extreme caution, Daniel examined the trap. It's rusted but still holding strong. I need to pry it open while you pull the cub's paw free. Emma's eyes widened. Me? I can't do both, Daniel explained, and they seem calmer around you and Noah. Setting Noah down on a soft patch of moss nearby, Emma steeled herself. The adult bears watched intently as Daniel used a sturdy branch as leverage against the trap. Emma positioned herself to gently guide the cub's paw out once there was enough space. "Ready?" Daniel asked, strain evident in his voice as he pushed down on the branch. Emma nodded, and as the trap's jaws separated slightly, she carefully worked to free the cub's injured paw. The cub cried out, causing the adult bears to growl and step forward. "Steady," Daniel cautioned, his arms trembling from the effort of holding the trap open. In that tense moment, something extraordinary happened. Noah crawled forward, reached out his tiny hand, and patted the frightened cub's head. The simple gesture had an immediate effect. The cub quieted, and the adult bears relaxed. With Noah's innocent intervention creating a moment of calm, Emma successfully freed the cub's paw. Daniel quickly wrapped the wound with gauze from the first aid kit, working with the efficiency of someone who had treated many injured animals before. "The bleeding stopped," he announced, "but this little one needs proper veterinary care." The adult bears approached cautiously, sniffing their cub, and then, remarkably, sniffing Noah too. The larger bear, presumably the mother, made a soft huffing sound toward Emma and Daniel that contained no aggression, only what seemed like gratitude. Noah babbled happily, reaching up to touch the mother bear's fur without fear. Before Emma could react, the bear gently nuzzled the baby's hand, a gesture so tender it brought tears to her eyes. Daniel carefully lifted the injured cub. "We need to get this little one to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. These bears trusted us with their baby. We need to make sure it survives." As they prepared to leave, a sudden crack of a branch froze them all. From the shadows emerged two men with rifles and hunting gear, poachers looking for their trap. Their expression shifted from surprise to anger when they saw the family with the bears. "Hey!" one shouted. "That's our catch." Daniel positioned himself protectively in front of Emma and Noah. "Trapping bears is illegal in these woods," he called back firmly. The poachers raised their rifles slightly. "Walk away and mind your own business," the taller one threatened. What happened next would be recounted for generations in their small town. The two adult grizzlies, sensing the new threat, positioned themselves between the poachers and the family. Their posture was unmistakable. They were protecting not just their cub, but the humans who had helped them. The poachers' bravado faltered at the sight of two full-grown grizzlies facing them down. After a tense standoff, they backed away, disappearing into the forest with muttered threats. Once the danger had passed, Daniel turned to Emma. "We need to report this and get help for the cub." Emma nodded, gathering Noah into her arms. The adult bears watched as Daniel cradled their injured cub, seemingly understanding that these humans meant to help, not harm. The family made their way back toward their cottage, the bears following at a distance. When they reached the edge of the forest, Daniel handed the cub to Emma briefly while he called the local wildlife authorities. As they waited, the most remarkable scene unfolded. The mother bear approached Emma, who stood holding both Noah and the bear cub. With gentle movements that defied everything known about wild grizzly behavior, she nuzzled her cub, then briefly touched her nose to Noah's foot in a gesture that could only be interpreted as thanks. When the wildlife rangers arrived, they were astonished by the bear's behavior. The cub was carefully taken for treatment, while the adult bears remained at the forest edge, watching. "I've never seen anything like this in 30 years of wildlife work," the head ranger admitted. "These bears sought you out specifically for help." Emma nodded, still cradling Noah. "They came to our baby. It was like they knew he would understand when we wouldn't." In the weeks that followed, the story spread throughout their community and beyond. The cub recovered fully at the rehabilitation center and was eventually released back into the wild with its parents, who had remained surprisingly close to the area. The family often spotted the bears at the forest edge, always keeping a respectful distance but seeming to watch over the cottage, especially when Noah played outside. Wildlife experts came from around the country to study this unprecedented relationship, but none could fully explain the extraordinary bond that had formed between a human baby and the wild bears he had helped save. Some things, Emma realized, went beyond scientific explanation. Sometimes compassion spoke a language that crossed the boundaries between species, and the purest form of that language came from the innocence of a child who saw not danger, but a family in need, just like his own. As Noah grew, the bears eventually moved deeper into the forest, but the legend of the baby who conversed with grizzlies became part of local folklore. And on quiet mornings when the sun filtered through the pines just right, Emma would catch Noah staring into the forest with a knowing look that reminded her that there were mysteries in this world that only the innocent could truly understand. 5 years later, the cottage at the edge of the forest had changed over the years. Daniel had built an extension, adding 2 more rooms to accommodate their growing family. 3-year-old Lily, Noah's little sister, played with her toys on a colorful rug while Emma prepared lunch in the kitchen. Noah, now 6 years old with the same curious blue eyes, sat by the large bay window that overlooked the forest, a sketchbook open on his lap. "What are you drawing today, sweetheart?" Emma asked, glancing over at her son's intense concentration. Noah didn't answer immediately, his small hand moving across the paper with surprising precision for a child his age. Since he'd started kindergarten, his teachers had marveled at his artistic ability and his unusual connection with animals. The classroom pet hamster that wouldn't let anyone else hold it would climb willingly into Noah's hands. The stray cat that lived near the school followed him during recess. It was as if he carried an invisible mark that animals recognized and trusted. "The bears," Noah finally replied, holding up his drawing. "I saw them again in my dream last night." Emma paused, wooden spoon in hand. Noah often spoke of the bears in his dreams, describing details about them that a baby couldn't possibly have remembered. Yet somehow he knew. The wildlife rangers had tagged the rehabilitated cub, a female they'd named Hope, and occasionally shared updates with the family. Hope had grown healthy and strong, eventually having cubs of her own. "They're coming back," Noah said simply, returning to his drawing. Daniel walked in from the garage, wiping greasy hands on a rag. "Who's coming back?" "The bears," Emma answered quietly, sharing a meaningful look with her husband. Daniel frowned slightly. Though the incident had changed their lives, he'd even switched careers, becoming a wildlife conservation officer after helping bring charges against the poachers. He still harbored concern about his son's ongoing fixation with the bears. "Noah, buddy, the bears have their own lives deep in the forest now," Daniel said gently, ruffling his son's hair. "They're wild animals who need to stay away from people." Noah looked up at his father with eyes that sometimes seemed too old for his young face. "Not from us," he said with certainty. "They need our help again." Before Daniel could respond, the phone rang. Emma answered it, her expression growing serious as she listened. "It's for you," she told Daniel, handing him the receiver. "It's Ranger Mike, says it's urgent." Daniel took the call, his frown deepening with each passing second. "When did this happen? How many?" "Yes, I can be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and turned to Emma. "There's been an incident. A logging company somehow got permits to clear-cut a section of protected forest. They've already started operations on the North Ridge." "But that's illegal," Emma protested. That area was designated as a wildlife sanctuary after the poaching incidents. "Someone falsified documents," Daniel explained grimly. already gathering his gear. Mike says there are reports of bears being displaced. They're wandering too close to town, and you know how people get when they see bears near their properties. Noah had gone very still, his pencil clutched tightly in his small hand. "It's their home," he whispered. "They're destroying their home." "I know, buddy," Daniel sighed, kneeling beside his son. "That's why I need to go help Ranger Mike stop this before more damage is done." As Daniel headed to the door, Noah suddenly stood up. "Dad, wait. You need to check the old den site, the one where we found the cub. That's where they'll go." Daniel hesitated, hand on the doorknob. "Noah, that was years ago. The bears have likely established new territories by now." "No," Noah insisted with unexpected vehemence. "Hope will go back there. She'll take her cubs there because she knows it's safe. She remembers." Emma placed a gentle hand on Noah's shoulder. "Honey, how could you possibly know that?" Noah looked up at his mother, his expression eerily calm. "Because she told me, in my dream." Daniel and Emma exchanged concerned glances, but after a moment Daniel nodded. "I'll tell Mike to check that area, can't hurt." He kissed Emma goodbye, hugged Noah and Lily, and headed out. As the door closed behind him, Noah returned to the window, pressing his palm against the glass as he stared into the forest with unwavering intensity. "They're scared," he murmured. The afternoon stretched on with no word from Daniel. Emma tried to distract the children with games and stories, but Noah remained vigilant at his post by the window, barely touching his dinner. As dusk approached, bringing with it a heavy rainstorm, Emma's worry deepened. "Time for bed, kids," she announced, trying to keep her voice steady. Lily complied without protest, tired from the day's play, but Noah shook his head. "I need to stay up. They're close now." "Noah, please." Emma sighed, too exhausted to argue. "Daddy will call when he has news." Just as she spoke, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the cottage into darkness. Lily whimpered, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter. "It's okay," Emma soothed, reaching for the flashlight they kept on a shelf. "Just a power outage from the storm." The beam of light cut through the darkness, illuminating Noah's face. Not frightened, but alert, expectant. "They're here," he whispered. A low, rumbling sound came from outside, barely audible over the pounding rain. Emma froze, her heart racing. It couldn't be. After all these years. "Noah, take your sister to the back bedroom and stay there," she instructed, her voice tense. "No, Mom," Noah countered with surprising authority. "They won't hurt us. They need our help again." Before Emma could stop him, Noah had unlatched the front door and pulled it open. The wind howled, driving rain into the cottage as Emma rushed forward, grabbing Noah by the shoulders. "Noah, no!" But her protest died on her lips as the flashlight beam caught movement on their porch. Standing there, water streaming from her dark fur, was a massive female grizzly bear. Even through the rain, Emma could see the distinctive white patch on her chest. Hope, now fully grown. Behind her stood two smaller bears, adolescent cubs huddling against their mother for warmth. "See?" Noah said softly. "I told you." Emma pulled Noah back slightly, her protective instinct battling with the incredible scene before her. Hope made no aggressive move. Instead, she lowered her head in that same unmistakable gesture from years ago, a plea. "Something's wrong," Noah said with certainty. "She's hurt." As if confirming his words, Hope shifted her weight, revealing a dark stain on her right flank that wasn't just rain. Blood. "She's been shot," Emma realized with horror. Hope made a low, pained sound, her eyes never leaving Noah's face. One of her cubs whimpered, pressing closer to its injured mother. "We have to help her," Noah insisted, trying to move forward. Emma held him firmly. "Noah, this is different. She's badly injured, and injured bears are dangerous. We need to call your father." She fumbled for her cell phone, but the storm had knocked out the signal. They were isolated with no way to reach Daniel or emergency services. "She'll die if we wait," Noah said, his voice breaking. "Mom, please. She came to us because she trusts us." Emma looked from her son to the bear, torn between fear and the undeniable truth before her. These weren't just any bears. This was Hope, the cub they had saved, now a mother herself, returning to the only human she had ever trusted. "Stay behind me," Emma finally conceded, her mind racing through the first aid training she'd taken after the first bear incident. "Lily, sweetheart, I need you to be very brave and stay inside, okay?" Lily nodded, wide-eyed but surprisingly calm, just like her brother had been as a baby. Emma approached the door slowly, speaking in the same soothing tone she'd heard Daniel use with injured animals. "Easy, Hope. Easy, girl. We remember you." The bear's intelligent eyes seemed to register recognition. She shifted, allowing Emma and Noah to see her injury more clearly in the flashlight beam. A gunshot wound in her side, not immediately fatal but serious enough to weaken her. "The first aid kit is in the bathroom," Emma told Noah. "The big one, with the red cross. Can you get it? And bring clean towels." Noah nodded, disappearing into the house while Emma maintained eye contact with Hope. "We're going to help you," she promised, wondering if she was making a deadly mistake. Noah returned with the supplies, and Emma took a deep breath. "I need to get closer to her to clean and bandage that wound." "Let me go first," Noah said. Before Emma could stop him, he stepped out onto the porch, moving slowly but without hesitation. Hope watched him approach, her massive body tense but making no threatening moves. When Noah was within arm's reach, he extended his hand, palm up, exactly as he had done as a baby. Hope lowered her great head, her breath warm against his skin. "She says the loggers came too close to their new den." Noah spoke so softly, Emma almost didn't hear him over the rain. "Someone shot at them when they tried to escape." Emma wanted to ask how Noah could possibly know this, but there was no time. "Tell her we need to clean her wound. It will hurt, but we want to help." Noah nodded, maintaining that strange, silent communication with the bear. After a moment, Hope slowly lowered herself to the porch floor, exposing her injured side more fully. Emma cautiously approached, medical supplies in hand. The cubs growled softly, but Hope made a rumbling sound that quieted them. "I don't think the bullet is still in her," Emma observed, examining the wound with the flashlight. "It looks like it went through, but she's lost a lot of blood, and there's risk of infection." Working with careful, methodical movements, Emma cleaned the wound while Noah kept Hope calm, whispering to her continuously. The bear flinched occasionally but remained still under Noah's influence. Emma applied antiseptic, packed the wound with clean gauze, and wrapped a bandage around Hope's massive torso as best she could. "This isn't enough," Emma admitted when she'd finished. "She needs antibiotics and proper veterinary care." Noah stroked Hope's head. "She just needs safe shelter tonight. The humans looking for them will give up in the storm." As if understanding, Hope struggled to her feet. For a terrifying moment, Emma thought the bear might attack now that her wound had been treated, but instead, Hope gently nudged her cubs toward the tree line at the edge of the yard. "She's leaving?" Emma asked, confused. Noah shook his head. "Number. She's showing us where the others are." "Others?" Emma felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. Lightning illuminated the yard, And in that brief flash, Emma saw them. More bears, at least 4 or 5, huddled at the forest's edge. Among them was an enormous male with a graying muzzle that Emma recognized instantly. One of the original bears who had come for help years ago. "My God," she whispered. "They brought their whole family." Noah nodded solemnly. "The logging destroyed all the dens in their territory. They have nowhere safe to go." Emma pulled Noah closer, overwhelmed by the responsibility suddenly thrust upon them. "Noah, we can't help all these bears. It's too dangerous." "We don't have to help all of them," Noah explained with that same eerie calmness. "Just hope. The others will follow her. She knows a safe place, but she's too weak to lead them there without rest." "How do you know all this?" Emma finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind for years. Noah looked up at her, rain dripping from his hair. "I just know," he said simply. "Like how you know when Lily's about to cry before she makes a sound. I just know." The night passed in tense vigilance. Emma brought blankets to the porch, creating a makeshift shelter where Hope and her cubs could rest protected from the worst of the rain. The other bears remained at the forest's edge, occasionally visible when lightning flashed, like silent sentinels. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, clutching her rabbit, while Noah kept watch by the window. Emma checked Hope's bandages every hour, relieved to see the bleeding had stopped. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving behind a washed-out landscape glistening in the early light. The rumble of a vehicle approaching sent Hope struggling to her feet, her cubs instantly alert. Emma tensed, fearing it might be hunters or angry loggers, but the familiar sight of Daniel's truck brought relief. He wasn't alone. Ranger Mike and 2 other conservation officers were with him, their expressions changing from concern to astonishment as they took in the scene. Emma and Noah on the porch with a family of bears, more bears visible at the forest's edge. Daniel approached slowly, his hand instinctively moving toward his sidearm before dropping away. "Emma? Noah, are you okay?" "We're fine," Emma assured him. "It's Hope. She's been shot." Daniel's gaze locked on the bandaged bear. "Hope? The cub we rescued?" Noah nodded. "She came back because she needed our help again. The loggers destroyed their home." Ranger Mike stepped forward, keeping a respectful distance. "We managed to get an emergency injunction to stop the logging," he explained, his voice hushed with awe at the scene before him. "But not before they'd cleared nearly 50 acres. We found illegal hunting traps, too. Someone was taking advantage of the displaced wildlife." "This isn't just about one injured bear," Daniel realized, looking at the group at the forest's edge. "This is an entire extended family group. They've lost their territory." Noah moved closer to Hope, placing his small hand on her massive shoulder. "She knows where they can go. There's a valley beyond the North Ridge that humans never visit. They'll be safe there." "The boy's right," one of the other rangers chimed in, surprise evident in his voice. "There's a secluded valley in the old growth forest. We've documented bear activity there, but never managed to access it fully. It's protected terrain." Daniel knelt beside his son, searching his face. "Noah, how do you know about this place?" Noah met his father's gaze steadily. "Hope showed me, in my dreams." In another time, another situation, Daniel might have dismissed this as a child's imagination. But here, with living proof before him, bears who had sought out his family not once but twice, he found himself nodding. "She needs antibiotics before she can make the journey," Emma explained, pointing to Hope's wound. Ranger Mike nodded. "We brought an emergency veterinary kit just in case. We can treat her here." What followed was an extraordinary collaboration between humans and bears. With Noah acting as an inexplicable mediator, the rangers were able to properly treat Hope's wound, administer antibiotics, and even check the conditions of the other bears. News of the unusual gathering spread quickly through the conservation community, bringing wildlife experts and biologists to witness what many would later describe as impossible. 3 days later, as Hope's strength returned, the family stood at the edge of their property to witness an unprecedented sight. Led by the old male grizzly, the bears began their journey toward the secluded valley, moving in a coordinated group through the forest. Hope was the last to leave, pausing to look back at Noah one final time. "Goodbye," Noah whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Stay safe." Hope made a soft huffing sound, then turned and disappeared into the trees. In the months that followed, the story of the bears who twice sought human help became international news. Conservation efforts in the region received unprecedented funding. The illegal logging operation was exposed, revealing corruption that reached into the highest levels of local government. Daniel established a wildlife corridor protecting the route between their property and the secluded valley, ensuring the bears would always have a safe passage. Researchers who set up remote cameras in the valley occasionally caught glimpses of Hope and her family thriving in their new home. As for Noah, his unique ability to understand and communicate with animals became the subject of scientific study. Researchers discovered that he possessed an extremely rare neurological condition that allowed him to perceive animal communications on a level that most humans couldn't access. When asked to describe how he communicated with the bears, Noah would simply say, "I listen with more than my ears." On Noah's 7th birthday, Emma found him sitting on the porch steps, staring into the forest as he often did. "Do you miss them?" she asked, sitting beside him. Noah nodded. "Sometimes, but I still see Hope in my dreams. She has new cubs now, smaller ones." Emma put her arm around her remarkable son. "Do you think they'll ever come back?" Noah leaned against her, considering the question with a wisdom beyond his years. "They won't need to," he finally said. "But someday, we might need them." As if in answer, a distant roar echoed from the mountains. Not threatening, but powerful and free. A reminder that sometimes the most profound connections are formed in moments of need, transcending the boundaries between species and leaving an indelible mark on the souls of those brave enough to reach across the divide. And in the years to come, whenever hikers or campers reported being mysteriously guided away from danger in those woods, local rangers would share knowing glances but say nothing. Some stories were better left as legends, whispered around campfires. Tales of bears who understood human compassion and a child who spoke their language. For Noah and his family, the truth was simpler. In a world often divided between human and wild, they had discovered that the heart's language needed no translation. It was a lesson as old as time, revealed through the innocent eyes of a child and the trust of creatures many feared but few truly understood. The forest held its secrets, and Noah kept his promise to Hope, to protect the connection between their worlds, invisible to most, but as real as the ancient trees that witnessed their extraordinary bond. 10 years later, the pristine valley that had become home to Hope and her family remained largely untouched by human presence. Remote cameras mounted discreetly in trees captured occasional glimpses of the bears, providing valuable research data without disturbing their natural behaviors. What had begun as one family's extraordinary encounter had evolved into a groundbreaking wildlife study spanning more than 15 years. Noah Marshall, now 16, stood at the edge of the observation platform his father had built on their property. The wooden structure, weathered by years of mountain seasons, offered a panoramic view of the forest and the distant ridgeline where the protected bear corridor began. The morning fog was just beginning to lift. revealing patches of the lush landscape below. "Thought I'd find you up here," came Daniel's voice as he climbed the ladder to join his son. Now, in his late 40s, Daniel's hair had begun to gray at the temples, and lines etched around his eyes spoke of years spent in the wilderness. After the second bear incident, he had risen through the ranks of the Conservation Service, eventually becoming the regional director of wildlife management. "Any sign of them?" Daniel asked, handing Noah a steaming mug of coffee, a recent concession to his son's growing maturity. Noah shook his head, his gaze never leaving the forest. "Not for almost 2 months now. The cameras in Sector 4 went dark last week too." Daniel frowned. "Battery failure?" "Maybe," Noah replied, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. "Or someone tampered with them." The wildlife corridor established after Hope's return had become a model conservation project, attracting international attention and significant funding. But with that attention had come controversy. The land had appreciated enormously in value, and development companies continually pressured local officials to rezone portions for commercial use. The Marshall family had become unwitting symbols of resistance against these corporate interests. "The university called again," Daniel said after a moment of companionable silence. "Dr. Winters is very interested in having you join her research program next year." Noah's unique ability to sense and interpret animal behavior had made him something of a scientific curiosity. Over the years, he'd participated in numerous studies, working with researchers who sought to understand his extraordinary gift. Dr. Eleanor Winters, a renowned expert in animal cognition at the State University, had been particularly persistent in recruiting him. "I haven't decided yet," Noah replied, shifting uncomfortably. What he couldn't explain to his father, what he could barely explain to himself, was the increasing frequency of his dreams. Hope's presence in his sleeping mind had never fully disappeared, but lately the dreams had taken on a new urgency, filled with images of fire, displaced animals, and a looming threat he couldn't quite identify. "Well, no rush," Daniel assured him. "You've got options most kids would envy. Full scholarship offers from 3 universities, and Dr. Winters practically guaranteeing you a place in her graduate program eventually." Noah nodded absently, then suddenly stiffened, his gaze fixing on a point in the distant tree line. "Dad," he said quietly, "look, by the old lightning-struck pine." Daniel squinted, then reached for the binoculars hanging from a hook on the platform railing. Through the powerful lenses, he could just make out movement, a flash of dark fur against the green foliage. "Is it them?" he asked, though he already knew the answer from his son's expression. Noah's face had taken on that distant look his family had come to recognize, the look that meant he was connecting with something beyond ordinary human perception. "It's Hope's oldest daughter," he said after a moment. "The one with the white splash on her forehead. She's alone, and she's afraid." Before Daniel could respond, Emma's voice called from below. "Daniel, Noah, you need to come down right away." They found Emma in the living room, her attention fixed on the television where a breaking news bulletin was being broadcast. Lily, now 13 and showing signs of inheriting her brother's intuitive connection with animals, stood beside her mother, her face pale with concern. "Authorities have now confirmed that the fire began in 3 separate locations," the news anchor was saying, suggesting this was not a natural occurrence but a deliberately set blaze. Fire crews are struggling to contain the spread, which has already consumed over 3,000 acres of wilderness area. The footage showed aerial views of smoke billowing from the northern forests, the exact area where the protected bear corridor began. "That's no accident," Daniel said grimly, already reaching for his phone. Those are the exact boundaries of the conservation zone. Someone's trying to drive the wildlife out. The bears, Noah whispered, his mind racing to connect the dots between his dreams and this new threat. This is what Hope's been warning me about. Lily moved to the window, pressing her palm against the glass. Though her connection with the bears had never been as pronounced as Noah's, she had inherited enough of his gift to sense their distress. "They're coming," she said simply. Emma exchanged worried glances with Daniel. "All of them?" Noah nodded, his expression somber. "They have nowhere else to go. This valley was their last refuge." Daniel was already pulling on his boots and grabbing his gear. "I need to get to headquarters. We'll need to coordinate evacuation plans for the communities in the fire's path and figure out how to manage wildlife displacement." He paused, looking at his family. "Stay here. Keep the doors locked. If any bears show up, we'll help them if we can," Emma finished for him, her tone making it clear this wasn't up for debate. In the years since that first extraordinary encounter, Emma had become an advocate for wildlife conservation in her own right, establishing a rehabilitation program for injured animals. Daniel knew better than to argue. With a quick kiss for Emma and a reassuring squeeze of Noah's shoulder, he headed out, the sound of his truck fading as he drove toward town. Noah turned to his mother and sister. "We need to prepare. They'll be exhausted, possibly injured, and definitely scared." Emma nodded, already mentally cataloging their supplies. "Lily, help me gather the first aid kits and set up the treatment area in the barn. Noah, check our water reserves and get the cooling systems ready." As they moved with practiced efficiency, Noah couldn't shake the sense that this crisis was different, more calculated, more dangerous than anything they'd faced before. His dreams hadn't just been warnings. They'd been glimpses of a deliberately orchestrated attack on the sanctuary they'd worked so hard to create. By nightfall, the sky to the north glowed an ominous orange, and ash began to fall like gray snow around the Marshall property. Daniel had called twice with updates. The fire was spreading faster than predicted, jumping fire breaks and resisting containment efforts. Wildlife was on the move, fleeing south en masse. Noah stood on the porch, watching the forest line. The security lights illuminated the yard in harsh white light, creating sharp shadows among the trees at the property's edge. Something was moving out there. Multiple somethings, large and deliberate. "They're here," he called over his shoulder. Emma and Lily joined him, all three standing shoulder to shoulder as the first bears emerged from the trees. These weren't just Hope's family anymore. Noah counted at least 15 bears of varying ages and sizes, some displaying injuries from their desperate flight, burns on paws, singed fur, smoke inhalation evident in their labored breathing. Leading them was a massive female with a distinctive white splash on her forehead. Hope's oldest daughter, now fully grown and apparently the new matriarch. Behind her limped a graying bear that Noah recognized instantly, despite the years that had passed. "Hope," he whispered, his heart constricting at the sight of her injured state. The bear that had once been a rescued cub, who had later returned as a mother seeking help, was now elderly by bear standards. Her once glossy coat had dulled, and she moved with the stiffness of age, compounded by what appeared to be serious burns along her right flank. Something else caught Noah's attention. Hope was guiding something with her muzzle, nudging a small form that stumbled along beside her. A cub, barely 3 months old, unusually small and clearly struggling. Without hesitation, Noah descended the porch steps, ignoring his mother's instinctive call to be careful. This wasn't like the first time, when they'd approached wild bears with trepidation. These bears knew them, had sought them out specifically, and their need transcended ordinary caution. Hope's daughter, the one Noah had mentally named Stella years ago when he'd first seen the star-like splash on her forehead, approached him first, lowering her massive head in a gesture that mirrored her mother's from years before. Noah placed his hand on her broad forehead, closing his eyes as images flooded his mind. Humans with torches, the sharp crack of rifles, cubs hidden in hollow logs while adult bears led the hunters away. Fire spreading faster than even the strongest bears could run. They didn't just start a forest fire, Noah said aloud, his voice shaking with rage and grief. They were hunting them, driving them deliberately toward the flames. Emma had approached more cautiously, kneeling beside Hope as she assessed the elderly bear's injuries. "These burns need treatment immediately," she said, her voice calm despite the unprecedented situation. "And this little one," she gestured to the struggling cub, "he's severely dehydrated." Lily had already begun filling water troughs and laying out supplies from their emergency kits. With a confidence that belied her 13 years, she approached a young adult male bear with burned paws, speaking in soft, reassuring tones as she began to treat his injuries. The night unfolded in a blur of activity. The Marshall family worked tirelessly, treating burns, bandaging wounds, and providing food and water to the exhausted bears. The animals, normally solitary and territorial creatures, huddled together in the yard and barn in an unnatural display of cooperation born of catastrophe. Around midnight, headlights swept up the driveway, and Daniel's truck pulled in, followed by 2 other vehicles. Noah tensed, moving protectively toward the nearest group of bears, but relaxed when he recognized Ranger Mike and Dr. Winters stepping out alongside his father. Daniel's expression as he took in the scene, his family calmly ministering to over a dozen wild bears, contained both pride and concern. "We've got problems," he announced without preamble. The fire was definitely deliberate. We found accelerants and timer devices at all 3 ignition points. Dr. Winters approached slowly, her scientific curiosity visibly battling with awe. For years, she had studied Noah's abilities in controlled settings, but seeing him in this context, surrounded by bears who accepted his presence as if he were one of their own, was unprecedented. "Noah," she said quietly, "this is extraordinary." "This isn't a research opportunity, Eleanor," Daniel cut in sharply. "These bears need medical attention and a safe haven until we can assess the damage to their habitat." "That's why I'm here," she replied, recovering her professional demeanor. "I've brought supplies, tranquilizers if needed, and my veterinary team is 20 minutes behind us." She looked around at the bizarre scene. "Though it seems tranquilizers won't be necessary." Noah had moved to Hope's side, gently applying a cooling salve to her burned flank. The elderly bear's eyes, clouded now with age but still intelligent, watched him with what could only be described as trust. "What else is wrong, Dad?" Noah asked, sensing his father was holding something back. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his ash-dusted hair. "We found human casualties near the North Ridge. 2 men with hunting rifles and radio equipment. They weren't caught in the fire. They were executed, shot at close range." A heavy silence fell over the group. "Someone's trying to cover their tracks," Ranger Mike added grimly. "And doing a poor job of it. We found corporate documents on one of the bodies, preliminary surveys for a mining operation. Seems there's a significant lithium deposit under the conservation area." "Greystone Resources," Dr. Winters said, naming the powerful mining conglomerate that had been lobbying for access to protected lands for years. "They've been fighting your conservation efforts in court for a decade, Daniel." "And losing," Daniel replied. So they decided to take matters into their own hands, burn out the protected species, eliminate the problem bears that are the cornerstone of our conservation argument, and remove any witnesses to their operation. Noah's hand stilled on Hope's fur as a chilling realization dawned. Dad, if they killed their own people to cover this up— Daniel nodded grimly. Then we're all in danger. Once they realize the bears survived and came here— The sound of an approaching helicopter cut through the night, searchlights sweeping over the property before focusing on the extraordinary gathering in the yard. "Police?" Emma asked hopefully. Daniel's face hardened as he recognized the corporate logo on the helicopter's side. Number, "We need to get everyone inside. Now." But it was too late. The bears, already traumatized by the fire, began to panic at the deafening noise and blinding lights. The younger ones scattered toward the trees, while the adults formed a protective circle around the cubs and injured members. Hope struggled to her feet, placing herself between the helicopter and Noah. Her intentions clear despite her weakened state. She would protect this human just as he had protected her family. Stella and the other adult bears took up similar positions around Emma and Lily. The helicopter hovered lower, its spotlight fixing on Noah and Hope in the center of the yard. Through the glare, Noah could make out the shape of a rifle barrel extending from the open door of the aircraft. "Noah, get down!" Daniel shouted. Drawing his service with a final look at his parents, Noah gathered the emergency backpacks they kept ready, handed one to Dr. Winters, and took Lily's hand. Together with the bears, they slipped into the shadows of the forest just as the first corporate vehicles breached the property line. The journey through the burning forest was like descending into a nightmare. Guided by Hope and Stella, the unusual procession of bears and humans navigated pathways that seemed invisible until they were upon them. Ancient bear trails worn into the earth over countless generations. Dr. Winters, to her credit, kept pace despite her age and academic background, her scientific curiosity overriding her physical discomfort. "This is unprecedented," she kept murmuring, her phone continuously documenting their journey. Cooperative behavior across species in crisis conditions. The scientific community will have to reconsider everything we thought we knew about bear cognition. Lily, who had always lived in her brother's shadow when it came to their unusual abilities, proved herself invaluable. While Noah could communicate with the bears on a deeper level, Lily possessed a practical healing touch that seemed to ease their pain. The young cubs, in particular, responded to her, following her like imprinted ducklings. They traveled through the night, the glow of the forest fire creating an apocalyptic backdrop. Twice they had to change course when the flames jumped containment lines, and once they narrowly avoided a team of men with rifles who were clearly not legitimate firefighters. By dawn, they had reached a steep ravine that appeared impassable. Hope, moving with difficulty but absolute certainty, led them to what looked like a solid rock face covered with vines and undergrowth. Noah watched in amazement as the elderly bear pushed through the vegetation to reveal a narrow passage, a natural tunnel through the rock, invisible unless you knew exactly where to look. "This must be how they've remained undiscovered all these years," Dr. Winters whispered, her scientific mind calculating the implications. An entirely separate population, using hidden passages to move between valleys. The tunnel opened into a breathtaking sight. A hidden valley, untouched by the fire and seemingly untouched by human presence. A clear stream ran through its center, fed by a small waterfall tumbling from the rocks above. Ancient trees provided shelter, and the terrain offered natural dens and caves perfect for bear habitation. More surprising still were the occupants. At least 20 more bears were already present, looking up with interest but not alarm at the newcomers. Among them were bears with distinctive markings that Noah recognized from Hope's memories. Relatives from her extended family who had chosen this secret valley rather than the conservation area years ago. They've been living here all along, Noah realized aloud. A backup plan, a secret sanctuary. Hope made her way to a flat rock beside the stream, lowering herself with obvious relief. Her elderly body had reached its limits, the journey and her injuries taking their toll. Noah knelt beside her, recognizing with a heavy heart what was happening. "She brought us to safety," he said quietly to Lily and Dr. Winters. This was her final journey. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she joined her brother. Together, they stroked Hope's fur as the elderly bear's breathing grew labored. Around them, the other bears gathered in a circle, rumbling soft sounds of what could only be described as mourning. "I need to document this, Doctor," Winters said softly, though her own voice was thick with emotion. "The world needs to see what's happening here." As the sun rose fully over the hidden valley, illuminating the gathering of bears and humans in golden light, Hope took her final breaths. With her family around her and the humans she had trusted for generations by her side, she slipped away peacefully, her legacy secured in this secret place and in the hearts of those who had helped her. Noah felt a profound shift within himself as Hope's consciousness faded. The connection that had been present his entire life changed form but didn't disappear. Instead, he felt new connections forming, with Stella, with the cubs, with bears he'd never met before but somehow recognized. "She's gone," he said finally, his voice steady despite his grief. "But she saved all of us." Dr. Winters lowered her phone, her scientific detachment momentarily abandoned. "What happens now?" she asked. Before Noah could answer, his phone buzzed with an incoming call, surprising given their remote location. He answered to hear his father's voice, tight with emotion but triumphant. "Noah, can you hear me?" "Dad, are you and Mom okay?" "We're fine," Daniel assured him. "Better than fine." Dr. Winters' live stream went viral. International news picked it up. And when Greystone's men arrived, they found themselves facing not just us, but a crowd of local supporters and 3 news helicopters. There was a smile in his voice as he continued, "The governor just called. He's deploying the National Guard to help contain the fire and investigate Greystone. The company's stock is in freefall, and their CEO has been taken in for questioning." Noah closed his eyes in relief. "What about the conservation area?" "The bears' territory?" "Partially destroyed," Daniels admitted. "It will take years to recover. But the silver lining is that the public outrage has led to an emergency expansion of the protected lands, 3 times the original size." There was a pause before he asked, "How's Hope?" Noah swallowed hard. "She got us to safety, Dad, to a place I don't think humans have ever been before. But the journey was too much for her. She's gone." The silence on the other end conveyed Daniel's understanding of what this meant to his son. "I'm sorry, Noah. She was extraordinary." "Yes," Noah agreed, looking around at the secret valley and the bears who had accepted him and Lily into their midst. "She was, and her family still is." He took a deep breath. "Dad, I know what I want to do now. With my life, I mean." "Tell me," Daniel encouraged. "This place, it's like nothing I've ever seen. A hidden ecosystem that's remained untouched because the bears kept it secret. I want to study it, to understand it, but also to protect it. Dr. Winters and we could establish a research station, but with strict protocols to minimize human impact." He looked at Stella, who had taken up position on the rock where her mother had passed, her posture unmistakably that of a leader keeping watch over her family. The bears would be partners in the research, not just subjects. We'd learn from them as much as about them. Daniel's voice was warm with pride. That sounds like exactly what you were born to do, son. As Noah ended the call, Lily, her spirit seemed to live on in the mist that rose from the stream each morning, in the confident leadership of her daughter Stella, and in the curious eyes of generations of cubs who grew up knowing humans not as enemies, but as unusual allies in their hidden world. Sometimes, on the anniversary of that first extraordinary encounter, Noah would return to the original cottage where it all began. Standing on the porch where a baby had once reached out to desperate bears, he would marvel at how a single moment of innocent compassion had rippled outward, changing countless lives, bear and human alike, and revealing a profound truth, that the greatest miracles often begin with the simplest acts of kindness. And in the hidden valley, where bears and humans work together to protect a shared sanctuary, that miracle continued to unfold, a testament to what was possible when the boundaries between species dissolved in the face of mutual need and respect. It was Hope's final gift, and Noah's lifelong promise, to honor the trust placed in him by creatures most humans feared, and to share the wisdom of that trust with a world that desperately needed to remember its connection to the wild.